Thank you. Your time, trust, and your comments keep this community alive. As you listen, share your thoughts, feelings, and lessons below so we can learn together. Settle in. The truth and the twist are coming. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my wife ever did was leave our family dinner with a gentle smile, only to cross the street and comfort another man whose wife had just left him. Because of her, here's how it happened. The evening began like any other carefully planned family gathering. My mother had spent hours cooking, making sure every dish was perfect. The house smelled warm and inviting, filled with spices and laughter. Everyone seemed relaxed, enjoying the comfort of being together. My wife sat beside me, calm and graceful, blending in effortlessly. She laughed at the right moments, spoke kindly, and played her part so well that no one could suspect anything was wrong. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have her there with me that night. We had barely settled into dinner when the conversation started flowing freely. My siblings teased each other. My father told familiar stories, and my mother moved around making sure everyone was satisfied. My wife contributed just enough to seem engaged without drawing too much attention. She reached for my hand under the table once, squeezing it lightly, as if to reassure me of something I hadn't even questioned. Looking back now, I realized that moment wasn't affection. It was distraction. She was already preparing to leave, setting the stage for what she was about to do. Before this story gets even crazier, if you've ever trusted someone who completely shocked you, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because what happens next you won't see coming. About 20 minutes into dinner, she leaned toward me with a soft expression. Her voice was calm when she said she needed some air. It sounded harmless, completely normal. The room was warm, after all, and stepping outside for a moment wasn't unusual. I nodded without suspicion, barely lifting my eyes from my plate. She smiled at me in that gentle way she always did, then stood up and excused herself politely from the table. No one questioned her. No one thought twice. It was just a small, ordinary moment, one that would soon mean everything. Time moved on without her. At first, her absence didn't register. I was caught in a discussion with my brother, arguing over something trivial. Laughter filled the room, and glasses clinked against the table. The rhythm of the evening continued as if nothing had changed. But slowly, a strange feeling crept in. It wasn't immediate or overwhelming, just a quiet awareness that something was off. Her chair remained empty, her plate untouched. Still, I told myself she would be back any moment. There was no reason to think otherwise. It was my mother who finally noticed. She paused mid-conversation and glanced at the empty seat beside me. Her voice cut through the noise when she asked where my wife had gone. The question felt heavier than it should have. I shrugged it off casually, saying I would check on her. Inside, I still wasn't worried, just mildly curious. But as I stood up and looked toward the door, that small feeling of unease returned, stronger this time. Something about her absence no longer felt ordinary. I stepped outside expecting to see her nearby. The night air was cool, a sharp contrast to the warmth inside the house. I checked the balcony first, thinking she might be leaning against a railing, scrolling through her phone, or enjoying a quiet moment. But she wasn't there. I moved toward the backyard, calling her name softly, not wanting to alarm anyone inside. The silence that answered me was unsettling. It wasn't just that she was gone. It was how completely she had disappeared from the space she had just occupied. That was when the thought first crossed my mind. It came suddenly, without warning, and I tried to push it away just as quickly. Our neighbor lived directly across the street. His wife had left him only a week earlier, and it had become the quiet topic everyone discussed but never openly addressed. People whispered about it, speculating on what had gone wrong. I hadn't paid much attention at the time, but now, standing in the dark, that memory returned with a sharp clarity that made my chest tighten. I told myself I was overthinking. There were countless explanations for where she could be. She might have gone for a short walk, needed a moment alone, or even taken a phone call. But the unease refused to fade. Instead, it grew stronger with each passing second. My mind kept circling back to the same possibility, no matter how much I resisted it. And before I fully realized what I was doing, my feet had already begun moving toward the street. The road was quiet, lit only by dim streetlights that cast long shadows on the pavement. The world felt still, almost unnaturally so. I walked slowly at first, tried to calm myself, tried to convince myself that I was chasing nothing. But then I saw it. Her car was parked outside our neighbor's house. It wasn't just there by coincidence. It was positioned neatly, deliberately, as if she had planned this. The sight stopped me in my tracks. Everything inside me shifted in that moment. My heart began to race as I approached the house. Every step felt heavier than the last. I could feel my thoughts spiraling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I searched desperately for a reasonable explanation, something that would make the situation harmless. Maybe he needed help. Maybe she was just checking on him. Maybe there was nothing wrong at all. But deep down, beneath all the rationalizations, there was a growing certainty that something wasn't right. When I reached the door, I noticed it wasn't fully closed. It stood slightly open, just enough to reveal that someone was inside. Light spilled through the gap, faint but steady. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should knock or simply walk away. My instincts told me to leave, to avoid whatever truth might be waiting inside. But something stronger kept me there. Slowly, I stepped closer, my breath shallow, my ears straining to catch any sound from within. Then I heard her voice. It was soft, gentle, and filled with a kind of warmth I recognized all too well. She was speaking in a tone she used when she wanted to comfort someone, to make them feel safe. The sound of it hit me harder than anything else. It wasn't just that she was there, it was how she was there, present, attentive, and emotionally invested. At that moment, I realized this wasn't accidental. This wasn't a simple visit. His voice followed, low and unsteady. He sounded broken, vulnerable in a way that made it clear he was relying on her. He told her he didn't know what he would do without her. The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to fully process what I was hearing. The situation was unfolding in front of me, piece by piece, and each detail made it harder to deny the truth. There was a pause after that, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with something unspoken, something deeper than words. I didn't need to see what was happening inside to understand the nature of their connection. The silence said everything. It confirmed what I had been trying so hard to dismiss. Whatever was between them, it wasn't new. It wasn't spontaneous. It had been building long before this night. I didn't push the door open. I didn't confront them. I didn't need to. The realization had already settled in my mind, clear and undeniable. Instead, I took a step back, then another, distancing myself from the scene without making a sound. My heart was pounding, but I felt strangely calm at the same time. It was as if something inside me had already accepted what I had just discovered. Walking back toward my house felt surreal. The familiar surroundings now seemed distant and unfamiliar. The laughter from inside grew louder as I approached, a stark contrast to the silence I had just left behind. It was like stepping between two different realities, one filled with warmth and normalcy, the other with betrayal and hidden truths. I paused briefly at the door, taking a moment to steady myself before going back inside. Pause for a second. What would you do if you were in my position right now? Would you walk in or walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. I read everything, because what I did next changed everything. When I re-entered the dining room, everything looked exactly the same. The table was still full, the conversation still lively. No one seemed to notice anything had changed. I returned to my seat quietly, trying to blend back into the scene. The empty chair beside me felt heavier now, no longer just a temporary absence, but a symbol of something much deeper. I forced a small smile when someone spoke to me, pretending everything was fine. But inside, everything had shifted. Every laugh sounded different. Every word felt distant. I found it difficult to focus on what anyone was saying. My mind kept replaying what I had heard, analyzing every detail, searching for clarity even though the truth was already clear. The realization was settling in slowly, but its weight was undeniable. The person I trusted most had just revealed a side of herself I had never truly seen before. When she finally returned, she acted as if nothing had happened. She slipped back into her seat with the same calm expression, offering a quiet apology for being gone so long. No one questioned her. No one suspected anything. She resumed her role effortlessly, engaging in conversation, smiling, and behaving exactly as she had before. It was as if she had simply stepped out for air, just as she had said she would. That night, I said nothing. I watched, I listened, and I waited. Later, when we got home and the silence settled between us, I finally spoke. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her immediately. I simply asked one question. Where did you really go? She froze for just a second, but it was enough. That tiny hesitation confirmed everything I already knew. She tried to smile it off, repeating the same excuse about needing air. But this time, I didn't let it go. I told her exactly what I saw. The change in her expression was instant. The calm mask she had worn all night cracked. For the first time, she looked nervous. She sat down slowly, as if her legs could no longer hold her weight. Then she sighed, long and heavy, like someone who had been holding the truth for too long. And just like that, the lies stopped. She told me everything. It hadn't started recently. It had been going on for months. Quiet conversations, secret visits, emotional support that slowly turned into something more. She said our neighbor had been struggling long before his wife left, and she had been there for him. At first, it was innocent. At least, that's what she claimed. But over time, the lines blurred. Feelings grew where they shouldn't have. Then she said something that hit harder than anything else. She left him because she found out about me. Those words didn't just explain the situation. They redefined it completely. This wasn't just betrayal. This was the cause of someone else's broken home. My wife hadn't just crossed a line. She had destroyed one marriage while still being in another. I asked her why, not out of anger, but because I genuinely needed to understand how someone I trusted could do something like this. Her answer was quiet, almost offensive. She said she felt unseen in our marriage. She said I had become predictable, distant, too comfortable. With him, she felt needed, important, alive. That was her reason. Not because I was cruel, not because I had wronged her, but because she wanted to feel something different. I listened to every word without interrupting, and when she finished, the room fell silent again. She looked at me, waiting, maybe expecting anger, shouting, or even forgiveness, but I gave her none of that. Instead, I stood up calmly and walked into the bedroom. From the drawer, I pulled out a folder. I had started preparing it weeks ago, long before this night. Something in me had already sensed the distance, the change in her behavior. I didn't have proof then, but I had instinct. Inside that folder were documents, evidence, dates, messages I had quietly gathered, and most importantly, divorce papers already signed. When I returned to the living room, I placed the folder in front of her without a word. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling as she flipped through the pages. Confusion turned into realization, and realization into shock. She looked up at me, searching my face for something, anything, but found nothing. I'm done, I said simply. No shouting, no drama, just finality. That was my revenge, not anger, not chaos. Clarity. I had let her believe she was in control, that she could live two lives without consequence. But in the end, I walked away with my dignity intact, leaving her to face the reality she had created. And for the first time since that night began, I felt free. Freedom didn't feel the way I expected it to. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't come with some overwhelming sense of victory. Instead, it was quiet, almost unsettling. The house felt different that night. Emptier, heavier, like something invisible had been removed but left a hollow behind. She sat there on the couch, still holding the papers, still trying to process what had just happened. I didn't wait for her reaction. I didn't need to hear apologies or explanations anymore. I had already heard enough. What mattered now was what came next. And for the first time in a long time, that decision belonged entirely to me. She finally spoke, her voice trembling in a way I had never heard before. She asked me if I was serious, as if the papers in her hands were some kind of misunderstanding. I looked at her, really looked this time, and realized how unfamiliar she felt. This was someone I had shared a life with. Yet in that moment, she seemed like a stranger trying to hold on to something she had already lost. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence sit between us, heavy and undeniable, before calmly telling her that I had never been more serious about anything in my life. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't move to comfort her. That instinct, the one that used to pull me toward her whenever she was hurting, was gone. She tried to explain again, this time more desperately. She said it wasn't supposed to go this far, that she had planned to end things, that she still loved me. The words sounded familiar, like something rehearsed or borrowed from script. Maybe she believed them. Maybe she didn't. But either way, they didn't change anything. Love, I realized, isn't just what you say, it's what you choose repeatedly. And she had made her choice long before tonight. I told her she didn't need to explain anymore. Not because I understood, but because I didn't care to understand further. There was a difference. Understanding might have softened the blow, might have given me reasons to hesitate. But clarity? Clarity gave me direction. And right now, my direction was forward, away from everything that had quietly broken behind my back. She lowered her head, as if the weight of my words had finally settled in. For the first time, she looked small, not weak, but diminished, like someone who had overestimated how much they could get away with. That night, we didn't argue. There were no raised voices, no dramatic confrontations. Just two people sitting in the aftermath of something that had already ended, even if it hadn't been spoken aloud until now. Eventually, I told her I would be leaving in the morning. The house could stay with her, for now. It didn't matter to me. What mattered was distance. Space to rebuild something that had nothing to do with her choices. She nodded slowly, still in shock, still trying to find something to hold on to. But there was nothing left for her to hold. Morning came faster than I expected. Sleep had barely touched me. But I didn't feel tired. If anything, I felt alert, focused in a way I hadn't been in months. I packed only what I needed. Clothes, documents, a few personal items. Everything else felt unnecessary, like it belonged to a version of my life that no longer existed. She watched me from the doorway, silent, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. In the end, she chose silence. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to say that would matter. As I walked out of the house, I didn't look back, not out of anger, but because I didn't need to. The chapter was closed. Whatever memories existed there would stay there. I stepped into morning air, feeling its coolness against my skin, grounding me in the present. The street looked the same as always, but I wasn't the same person walking through it. Something had shifted, something permanent. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the noise inside my head began to quiet down. At first, it was difficult. The questions, the memories, the moments I replayed over and over again. But with time, they lost their sharpness. They became distant, like echoes fading in a large, empty space. I focused on building new routines, creating structure where there had once been chaos. Work became an anchor. Friends, a reminder that not everything in my life had been built on false ground. Then one day, I saw her again. It wasn't planned, just coincidence. She looked different, not physically, but in the way she carried herself. There was no confidence in her posture, no quiet control in her expression. She saw me too, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me, slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching something fragile. She asked how I was. I told her I was fine. It wasn't a lie. She nodded, as if trying to accept that answer, even though it clearly unsettled her. Maybe she expected anger. Maybe she expected resentment. But what she saw instead was something she hadn't prepared for: indifference. Not coldness, not cruelty. Just a calm absence of what used to be there. Before she could say anything else, I spoke. I hope you find what you were looking for, I said. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't bitter. It was honest. Because whatever she had been searching for when she walked out of that dinner, it was never something I could give her. And whatever I had been holding on to before that night, I no longer needed it. As I walked away, I realized something important. The real revenge wasn't the papers. It wasn't the silence. It wasn't even walking away. The real revenge was becoming someone who no longer needed answers from someone who chose to become a question. If this story hits you in any way, don't just scroll past it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe for more real stories like this. Because sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction and the next one might be even deeper.